Now let's dive into functions, one of the most important concepts in programming. By the end of this video, you will be able to create and use your own functions in Python like a pro. So let's go. So the first question is, what is a function? A function is a block of code that runs only when it is called. Functions are used to organize code into smaller parts, avoid repetition, and make your code reusable. Now to declare a function in Python, we use the def keyword. After that, we write a function name, and let's create a function called greet. Then we give parentheses and the colon sign, and inside that block we write the function body. So for example, I can write the print statement, and in between quotations I can write hello, welcome to the Python course. Now if I run the code, you will see no output because we define this function, but if we want to tell Python to execute this code, we have to call this function. So now how do you call a function? So for that, you just have to write the function name and just parentheses, just like we called list methods and tuple methods and etc. Now if you run the code, you'll see it prints hello, welcome to the Python course. Now you can say that why we are writing 3 lines, we could do that just writing this single line. If we did not use function and just use this single line and run the code, you'll see the same output. But let's say you have 3 print statement, and this has another long text, then you have another print statement, and this has long text, and if you run the code, it prints those 3 lines. But now let's say you come to a situation that you need to print this again. So what you have to do is you have to copy this and paste them below, then run the code. Okay, those got printed. Now let's say you want to print them again. So if you run the code, they got printed again. But now you can see, to write these 3 lines, we have to write some of 11 or 9 lines of code. Now if we used function here, what we could do is we could remove these lines and just wrap these print statements inside a function. So for example, that greet function. So now there's 3 print statement inside this greet function. Now if I run, you will see no output, but whenever you need output, you just call the greet function. Now if you call the greet function, it will print or execute these codes for one time. Now if you need that output again, you can call that function again, run the code, you'll get those output for 2 times. Now you can call that function as many times you want. You run the code, as you can see, those lines got printed for 3 times. So again, the def is a keyword used to define a function. This greet is the function name, and the code inside the function only runs when you call it using the greet, means the function name, and the parentheses. Let me remove some of the code from here and create another function. So I'm going to write the def keyword, and this time the function name would be greet underscore user. Now here in this function, we are going to work with parameters as well. So we wrote the def keyword, then the function name, we write the parentheses, and inside the parentheses we can take our parameters. So for example, we want a parameter called name, then we give the colon sign, and now I can write print, then hello, and we can concatenate with the name parameter. Okay, so now when we call the greet user function, we can pass a name. For example, I can pass Gojo here. So when we call the function greet user, it will take this data or the argument, this value, and it will store that inside there in the name. Means it will pass this value to this name parameter, and it will go inside the function and print hello and the name, which holds the value Gojo. So now if I run the code, you'll see it prints hello Gojo. Now you can call the function again, so greet user, and now you can pass Naruto, and if you run the code, you will see prints hello Gojo, then it prints hello Naruto. So behind the scenes, name is a parameter. When we call greet user with Gojo, the string Gojo is passed to the function as an argument. So this is argument and this is parameter, and it gets printed inside the function. Now we can work with multiple parameters as well. So after name, if I give a comma, then I can take another parameter, for example last name, and after name here we can also print the last name. But as we have two parameters in the function, we have to pass them when calling the function, otherwise it will throw error. So after the first argument, we have to give another argument, for example Satoru. In the second function call as well, we have to pass another argument. So here we can tell that the surname is Uzumaki. Now if I run the code, you'll see it prints hello Gojo Satoru, and in the next line it prints hello Naruto Uzumaki. Now you can have as many as parameters in the function declaration, but you have to keep in mind that if you have those parameters, you have to pass arguments for them as well. So the first example was about a normal function, and this one was function with parameters. Now we can have function with return value as well. So what I can do is I can write the def keyword to create a new function. First let me create a comment, and that is function with return value. Now after the def keyword, I can write the function name, and here let's say I expect two parameter, for example a and b, then colon, and inside the function body I want to add a and b, so I'm gonna write a plus b. Now I don't want to print that inside the function. Instead of that, I want to return the addition result from this function. So I don't want to use that result here inside the function, but I want to use this result outside the function. So I can return that to use outside the function by calling the function. So what I have to do is I have to call the function by add and parenthesis, and I have to pass the arguments. For example, I want to add 5 and 3, and it will return 8. So I have to store that inside a variable. So let's call that variable result. You can name this anything, doesn't matter. And then you can write the print statement, and inside quotation you can write sum is, then give a comma and just result. Now if you run the code, you'll see it prints sum is 8. Now again you can write the print statement, and inside the print statement you just can call the add function, and here pass 6, 4. Now if you run the code, you'll see it prints 10. So the addition result was 10. So this return sends the result back to wherever the function was called. Now let's see an example of a function with the default parameter value. So this example would be on function with default parameter value. So to define that function, we're gonna use the def keyword, and the function name would be greet underscore student. Then we give parentheses, and here we can take some parameters. For example, I want the student name. Now let's say when you call the function, you don't want to pass the student name as argument always. You can provide or you cannot provide, as you wish. So for that, if you provide, you want to print the student name. Otherwise you just want to print a default value like a general student. So for that default value, you can write the equal sign, and then inside quotation, if it is a string, then you can write that value. Okay, now you can give the colon sign, then you can define your function body. So here you can write the print statement, and then you want to say hello and then just the name. Okay, so now it won't print anything unless we call the function, so we have to call great student. Now as you can see, though we haven't provided any argument here, it is not throwing any error or does not showing any squiggly lines because we have a default value there. If we don't pass any argument, that will use this value instead of a name. So now if I call the function, you'll see it prints hello student. I haven't passed any argument here, but if you pass an argument here, for example great student, and if you pass for example Ichigo as a student name and run the code, you'll see instead of hello student it prints hello Ichigo. So this default value got overridden by this Ichigo name. Now you can have multiple parameter, as many as you want. So you can have a last name as well, then you can have a default value, for example surname, and you can give the comma, then write the surname, means the last name. The parameter name is last name and the default value is actually surname. So here after Ichigo you can give here Kurosaki. Okay, now if you run the code, it will print Ichigo Kurosaki. But if you do not give the second argument and just pass Ichigo and run the code, you will see it prints Ichigo, and for last name it prints the default value, which is surname. But if you don't provide any default value, you have to provide the parameters. So this becomes a mandatory parameter. So I have to pass Kurosaki here. Now, so we fixed the second function call, but as you can see in the first function call, it still shows error. And if we hover on the last name parameter, you can see non-default parameter follows default parameter. So we should not use a parameter which has default value before a parameter that does not have a default value. We should always use the parameters which does not have default value at the beginning, and then we should use the parameters with the default value. So now if I run the code, from here I can pass Uzumaki for last name. Now if I run the code, you'll see it prints hello student Uzumaki, because name we have not passed name here, so the value is used is student. Hello student, then a last name is provided, and that is Uzumaki, so it is printing hello student Uzumaki. And in the second function call, we are telling last name is Ichigo, but the last name should be Kurosaki and the name should be Ichigo. Now if I run the code, you'll see it prints hello Ichigo Kurosaki. So keep in mind that we should write the parameters which has not any default value at the first place, then we should add the parameters with the default value later. Now we can have a function with multiple return values. So functions with multiple return values. So now the function name would be calc, then we want two parameters, for example a and b, then the colon sign, and let's have two variable like add, and there we want the addition result of a and b, so a plus b. And after that let's have another variable called sub, and we want the subtract result there, so a minus b. And now we can return both of them. So write the return keyword, and we want to return add and sub. Now when you call the function calc, so you want to know the addition result of 10 and 3 as well as the subtract result, and now this function will return them, so you have to store them. So we can store the addition result inside x, and we can store the subtract result inside y, so x comma y then equal that function call. Now I'm seeing a squiggly lines because this variable name is add and we have a function named add at the top. but let's see if that works or not. Now I can write the print statement here and add result, that would be x, then again print and sub result, and that would be y. And now if I run the code, you'll see it works perfectly fine. And first we get our add result, 10 plus 3 is 13, and then we get our subtract result, 10 minus 3 is equal 7. So a function can return multiple values as a tuple, which we can unpack. So this function is returning add and sub as a tuple, and we are unpacking them. If you can remember, we understood how packing works in tuple in one of our previous video. So at the very end, again, if we ask that why we use functions, the answer would be it keeps code clean and organized, helps you use logic, makes debugging easier, and it is essential for modular programming and object-oriented programming. Now there are some naming rules for functions. So first of all, function names should be lowercase. As you can see, every letter of the function name is lowercase. You can use underscores or multi-word names. For example, calc underscore num, like this. And function names should describe what the function does. So this one is calculating. So the function name should be reasonable. You can name this z, but that does not make any sense. So if you write the function name calc, other programmers will understand that this function does some calculation. So descriptive name. So the summary here is we covered how to define a function and call a function, and that is with parameters and arguments. Then we used return statements, then default values, and we saw how to return multiple values as well. And now that's a wrap on today's lesson about functions in Python. In the next video, we are going to explore lambda functions, a quick way to write small functions in just one line. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more beginner-friendly Python videos. See you in the next one, and keep coding with confidence.